We are rocking and rolling. Well,
Excellent.
so to recap, Bill and Chuck and Key Cobb are going to get together soon to do future challenges and tips and tricks, which is a good thing. So, and speaking of tips and tricks, Bill generously volunteered to help us again.
Let's see. Who am I? Why am I? Where am I? Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Since the next challenge is, I guess, what we call close-ups, what I decided to do is to put something together real quick as far as what a minimum focus distance is. So that when we talk about close-up, how close can you really get to a subject, before you're too close and it goes out of focus. So here I'm just showing a lens here that shows right on the collar here what the closest you can focus to, which is 1.64 feet. And then it says through infinity. So that means that you'll get everything in focus from as close as 1.64 feet to the sun. And what's important to also note is that a minimum distance is not how far from the lens it is, it's how far from the sensor it is. So, if you have a lens on your camera and you're figuring, oh, I got 1.6 feet, it's not from there. It's from actually where the lens resides in your camera. And we'll have a slide on that to show you how you can actually tell on your camera where your sensor is. But every lens has a different minimum focus distance. And what I did is I listed some of my lenses down here and I looked them up. And you can see the lenses that are the widest of angles, you can get closer to your subject. So like my 16 to 35, I can be less than a foot away from the subject. Now, when I go to my 24 to 70, I have to be further away, 1.2 feet. When I get to my kit lens, that goes from 24 to 120. Now I'm 1.5 feet away. So, they constantly change. And the 50 millimeter nifty 50, that's back at about 1.2 feet. Then the monster telephoto that I have is 7.2 feet. So, each lens is going to be different. And like you can see on some of these, it only gets until you get into some monster telephoto where it becomes really drastically bigger. And one little tip I'll place in your head is, even with these minimum distances, if you have your camera in your hand holding and you're right at that point where maybe you have your 50 millimeter on and you're about 1.3 feet away from your subject, and you go and you press the button down to lock into focus, if you just sway a little bit in and press the button, it's going to be out of focus. So you got to be really, really careful when you hit that minimum focus that your camera stays exactly where it is. That's why when you get that close, it's probably best to be on a tripod, but it might be better just to give yourself a little extra room. So if you do just sway a little bit, you won't go shorter than that minimum focus distance. And this is the little icon or little notation that they have on a camera where your sensor resides. So if you were the kind of photographer that would want to actually measure out how far, you could actually put a tape measure starting at that point and extend out to your minimum focus distance. And that would provide you with, what your camera is capable of keeping in focus. How do you get closer than just your lens? We've talked about the extension tubes before. These are a relatively inexpensive way to get closer to your subject. And I have a set right here that looks very much like those there. It's the same size and everything. There's no glass in it, or there isn't any more after I do this. But all it really does is take your lens further away from the sensor, and you're able to get in closer to your subject. Like in the bottom here, it tells you at 12 millimeters, this is what that mushroom would look like. And these come apart. These are all independent, just like you see on the screen there.
Change your PowerPoint picture.
You did what?
Your PowerPoint picture hadn't changed. Have you got a picture of that? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go down 2 more.
What do you see up there right now?
Minimum focus distance.
The first slide.
Oh, that's
There.
There. Well, that's the diopters.
well, this is where we're supposed to be.
There.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Now we see the mushroom.
so like the small one is that 12 millimeter that you see up there, 20, then a 36, and they can be attached together to get even closer. On the bottom of the screen, it shows you what it would look like if you're looking at 12 millimeter, the smallest extension tube. Then if you changed it and put a 20 millimeter, you can see how closer you can get to your subject. And then 36 millimeter, you can even get closer. So if you stack these all together, you'll even get closer. But what happens when you use a extension tube, your depth of field, that space between what you see in focus and out of focus gets razor thin. You have to really, really pay attention, because if you're not on a tripod and you move just a little bit, it's amazing. You'll see it go in focus and out of focus. Now there's two different types. There's ones that have the electronics built in, which are these little electronics inside the camera that supplies the power, the autofocus, and things like that. They tend to be the more expensive ones. They may run about $130 or more. There's also ones that have no electronics that you use on manual, which are probably the best. And those you can get for anywhere from about $15 to $40. And the reason why I say best, I've struggled with these, and I have the type with the electronics, but they don't always autofocus just right. They just, I think you have much more control and much less variables if you would learn how to do these on manual. Focus manually, set your f-stop, your shutter speed, ISO manually, and just learn how to do that, because you should be on a tripod. It'll help you understand some of the differences of the f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, and I think you'll get much better images out of it, because I've tried these a number of times, and I bought these used, so maybe the guy was selling it for a reason. But you can certainly get in closer. Did it change the diopters?
Not yet.
Yep, no, it did.
And it's almost like I have to minimize it and bring it back out. The diopter, this is just a piece of glass that gets screwed on the front of your lens, just like a regular filter. They're relatively inexpensive. They're obviously easy just to screw on. But my concern is it's another piece of glass. to put on your lens, which is layers and layers of glass already. I've never used one. It's just that it is an option. I believe they come in just different powers that you can buy, but it's not a direction that I would go in. I would probably be much more happy playing around with the extension tubes. Yeah.
And with that strong bill of sales and endorsement by Bill, I have a set of 3 of those add-on filter type things, a 1, a 2, and a 4. And anybody is welcome to them. It's for a 55 millimeter lens, but if you're interested in trying them, and you have a 55 millimeter lens, you're welcome to them.
Yeah, and one important thing that I forgot to say is like those diopters, they screw on the outside of your lens. Now, when you go for extension tubes, they are mount specific. So if you would go for one, you need to make sure it's the brand of your camera. Because a Nikon mount and a Canon mount won't go onto your camera. I mean, Canon and Nikon couldn't even get together to say which way you put your lens on when you lock it on. One goes left and one goes right. So, that's specific. But the best, if you're really, really, really interested in macro photography, of getting really close to your subject, there's no better way than the lens itself. I mean, when you buy a lens like this, you have your autofocus in there. You have all the electronics. You have probably much better lens than the one that you would put on the end of an extension tube. So, but these can be pricey. But they are by far the best way to approach it if that's something special, something you really, really want to do, and you'll use the lens enough. Because you can see the detail on this frog and the stem that it's latched onto. I mean, it's just amazing. And no, it's not my picture. That's all I really have on that. I mean, our challenge is called close-up, which sometimes when I've been out with folks walking around Farrington or so, and they go to take a picture, I often tell them, use your feet and get closer. So you can think of close-up as macro, or you can think of just, this would be my typical picture, but what if I get closer? What if I take a part of it? It's almost like a little bit about an image within an image that we did, one of the challenges before. Think of just getting closer to your subject than you might normally. And I think that'll be a good way to learn.
Thanks, Bill.
Any questions?
It's good info.
I have used extensions and without a tripod, only because what I was photographing was like a flower, for example. It was hard to get a tripod in the exact position I needed to. A lot of your images will be out of focus because of that, but sometimes they really work well. So you need to fool around with it.
And that's why we have digital. It doesn't cost us anything to take 20 pictures and get one good one out of it.
And I did get I have a very expensive macro lens. And one of the challenges, because I wanted to do macro, one of the challenges is focus. Because you'll get one thing in focus, but something else won't be. So I think I'm very much a beginner in figuring out how to do macro.
I can't speak for anything other
That's the
than
conversation
Nikon,
Bob
but
and I had yesterday.
I can't speak for anything other than Nikon, but I suspect it's there on every camera, and it's something that we've talked about before. If I had to rely on my actual vision, to focus these days, I couldn't do it. But on Nikon, if there is a green dot at the bottom left-hand corner of the viewfinder that will tell you when it's in focus. And, you know, I quit looking at the subject when I get it basically set, and then just start turning the lens on manual focus until that green light comes on and I push the shutter. So you have bad eyes like I do, that's a real saving grace.
Well, the one thing too is that next Tuesday, and I know you're gonna have to leave probably before we get to it, Susan, but we can always go over it, is about the tack sharp images, meaning the focus points, the focus groups, the focus modes, things like that. Because Bob and I actually got together yesterday. We just decided to sit down and just have a talk, and he brought his camera with him. And on a Nikon, which maybe can do too, is that you have that little focus dot in there and you put it right on your subject. Now, we were able to set up Bob's that when he does the preview, when he looks on his camera and looks at the picture that he just took, it shows right where that focus point focused on. So then he can tell, oh, did he miss his subject? You know, so if it happens on a Nikon, we might be able to figure out how to do that on a Canon as well.
And Bill, are you talking about live mode?
No,
There's
no,
well
there's
on Nikons as well. There's a live mode that instead of having to look through the viewfinder, you can look at the LCD. And you know, a lot of new cameras, that's all they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what this does, you go into your menus to playback. So you can set up if you want to see a histogram, if you want all the data, you know, that you can go through when you're just doing your chimping, you're looking at your image on the camera. And one of the functions is to show you where that focus point was when you took the picture.
Mhm.
So, and now Bob knows that now, and he'll be able to go back and say, was I really on my subject or did I miss it? You know,
My problem was after we met, I went out back, excuse me, and tried to take some pictures of a bird. It's hard for me to get the focus point on a really quick bird that doesn't just sit there for a while. So I played around with that for a while yesterday.
yeah,
You know,
because it's so important to understand what that focus point is and make sure that it's on your subject at the time you're taking the shot. But it's also nice to know if your picture didn't come out the way you expected, where it was.
So Bill, if I would have set the focus points to have, you can get multiple focus points. Besides, yesterday, my camera was set to one focus point.
I think it was 9.
I think you can go, it goes from 9 to 12, I think, on my Nikon.
I only saw one.
Okay.
Could be my eyesight though. So I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Well, in that mode, there's like a sub menu. There's a choice of 1, I think 9, like you say, Bill, and I think 12. But anyway, yeah, and you can. So it just makes the that video, Bill, that you recommended, Northrop. Those guys are great. I never saw their stuff, but they. From my camera, you know, I watched that and they were talking about how to find that stuff. But it's just so informative.
Well, next Tuesday, we'll start jumping into the specifics.
Yep.
Not to get overly technical, but do you know where chimping came from when you talk about looking at your pictures chimping? That's it.
You look like a chimp getting excited.
What was that in your hand, Ellen?
extension tubes, I got a cheap set from B&L, and they warned you that they are almost impossible to get. I mean, you really have to be pressing to get there. Finally, I got the thing, particularly the largest one, but that's the one that I don't use anyway because the depth of field is so shallow. So of the three, I only use the little one, and it still sounds like grit when I take them apart. So cheap is probably not good. The reviews on this said they were hard to take apart, and they are. So my advice on cheap extension tubes is don't get cheap extension tubes if you're going to get them. They do work, but boy, particularly if you've got arthritis in your hands, it is rough. Ugh.
Okay, ready to move to pictures?
Yes.
We
Sure.
don't have a lot today, but we have some, as usual, that have some good ones. So here we go. Let me get rid of some of this stuff that's up here.
Oh, nice.
Hmm.
It's really cool.
Great.
Well, I'm trying to find. Oh, it's under more. Come on, Mike. Hide floating. Full screen. Okay. Bill.
Okay, this is, yeah, one of mine from, I went to the archives. I was a bad man again.
You're not alone.
This is back probably from about 2006 when I owned just this, which is a Canon G15. It's an advanced point and shoot. It fits in your pocket, but it has most of the same power as a DSLR. And so this is a, like a 12 megapixel camera. And this was when we were living up in Kentucky, and we took our granddaughters to get their first horseback ride because we had a neighbor who owned a horse and kept him at these stables. So this was just the shot of, I saw my son-in-law walking away and just took this one, just kind of cropped it, 60th of a second. It was at f2.8, which is a shallow depth of field. So you see the sides are kind of clear, but then they start fading out as we get to him, which is, I didn't do it on purpose, unfortunately, but that's the way it came out. And it was just 2.8 at a 60th of a second. And again, it was a point and shoot. So I wouldn't doubt if at the time I probably just had it on automatic. So
Does this have a green
and
cap
strangely that
on other screens as it does on mine?
green,
Yeah. The
you say
shadowy
green?
part towards
Yeah.
the front.
Yep.
Green?
It's greenish.
Yep.
No?
Mm,
Oh,
Yeah,
toward
mine is.
a little bit, or gray green, yeah.
yeah. It's a good shot.
Well, let me
I had to
ask you this.
Bill pulls out
Let
his
me ask
old,
you this, if you were using your DSLR now, I'm impressed that you can get some detail in the outside and still get detail in the dark. But I guess asking how you would set the camera now is useless, but I've
Yeah.
tried stuff like that, and it's either black inside and the exposure is right for the outside, or vice versa.
Yeah,
Um,
again, I don't even know what my camera was set up at the time. I just know what the metadata is, but I'm sure it was just let it rip. Has a lot more to, guess, to do with the metering than it does with the other settings, because the camera set the exposure on this. I didn't change anything on this. The only thing I did, which might seem strange because it gives you kind of an optical illusion here, but that opening at the end there is actually straight. So that's the only thing I did to it, is straighten it. Otherwise, it's pretty much just out of the camera. Yeah, I
This
don't know if I could.
captures, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do this again if I used my head and tried to do it. Sometimes things just happen by luck.
Yeah.
This certainly captures backlighting.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be hard to do.
Also, Bill.
Well, this one was down in Havana, and we were walking through this long tunnel, and it was really dark in the tunnel. But then I saw the picture of Che out there, and I had a Canon 80D or 80D. It always sounds like I'm talking about ADD. It was just a quick capture, 5.6, let's see, 800th of a second. And at the time I had the 18 to 135 millimeter lens, which was a really good match for the Canon camera. And this was at the 135 millimeters. So that walkway was pretty long. And I did end up cropping a lot of this because some of these guys were wearing shorts. And yeah, it just didn't look right that people with shorts were walking. It kind of reminded me of the old Apple commercial when they're mimicking like 1984. Where they're downtrodden and here's Che looking over him. I just cropped it a little bit, straightened it a little bit, and actually the person I think in the very front actually had a sign, and it was like number 50, so that you were in your group and you stayed with the group, but I took that out. But
Any other
Great
comments?
silhouette. Yeah, it does silhouetting.
Yeah, I like the silhouetting.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is
Yeah, I like the composition. Oh, that's mine.
Yep.
This was also kind of an accidental one, I think. Well, this is a few years ago. We were visiting our son. It's probably been almost 5 years ago now, but we were visiting him in California, where he still lives, and this was at Pismo Beach. It was a sunset, and my son's also a photographer. He probably does more video, but anyway, we were at this. We went specifically to the beach to shoot some photographs before we had dinner, and the settings are pretty crazy on this thing. I have a 55 to 200 millimeter lens. This was it's with my Nikon body that I currently use, the 720, and it was, like Bill said, I don't know how I had it set up. Maybe aperture priority, but I had some strange things. So it actually is showing a focal distance of 285. So that's because my camera is a crop sensor, I think, and so the 200 is showing. I had it on 200, I believe, and it was then showing as a focal length of 285. And my ISO is at 2000, which I wouldn't normally. I don't know. That's really high for shooting into the sun. And so therefore my f-stop was at f32, and my speed was 1/1000. So I would never think about those settings now. I don't know what I was doing. But one of the nice things about having that super fast shutter speed is that I did freeze those birds going in the background. And if I was going to shoot it over again, I would, balance the triangle differently. And I didn't have a filter on the lens either. I would probably have a filter, a circular polarizer on too, for that kind of shot.
Yeah, well, going into the sun, the circular polarizer won't help.
That won't really do much with it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing we talked about. 90 degrees is the optimum.
that's right. Yeah.
You got a nice aurora. I mean,
Yes. Yeah. It was, I just happened to get a nice exposure there, just in spite of whatever I was doing.
and Chuck, how much did you crop this? A lot or none or?
Very little. It's been a while. No, actually, I just did that. I just re-edited this in RAW, so I did very little. Actually, I did clean. There were a couple of lens spots that one of my other images a few meetings ago, I had a bunch of lens spots, and I've since been a lot more careful of looking for those. So I had one or two, and I got rid of them. So I used Photoshop Essentials to do my post editing. But I didn't really change the hue very much or the saturation. It was all there, and minimal cropping.
The reason
Did
I
you
asked
straighten it?
Chuck is that and I'm going to channel Graham for Mark, the horizon is not quite level, but if there's not much left in this shot and you had straightened it, some of that detail at the top of the frame, instead of, I think it's nice that it is not just all dark and that you can see some of the rough detail in it. And if you'd straightened it, that would be gone. But if you,
I thought about right. I couldn't. I didn't try to straighten it, but I thought that the top, like you're saying, I think it wouldn't. The composition at the top wouldn't benefit from the straightening.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So I just left it.
All right.
So those spots between the two posts on the left, are they birds out there or is it dust spots?
They're birds on the left. They're way out there. There were quite a few birds.
Yeah.
So I didn't take them out. I blew it up just about like that, and I looked at them and I thought, well, I'm just going to leave them.
Yeah, because when you said that it pushed it up to f32. That's a point where dust spots that might be on your lens might actually show up in the image.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because if you go to lower your f-stop, I mean, you can have scratches on your camera. You can even shoot through fences. And you won't notice it.
Yeah.
But when you get to those high f-stops, you're creating such
Well, and I also know from reading that it's usually not advised that you go that far to the ends of your lens capability or your camera's. I guess it's the lens, that it can cause distortion. So if I were to do it over again, I would never shoot at f32. I must have had it on for a long time. I was shooting at aperture priority and may have had it on aperture priority, and with that crazy ISO, I would anyway. So.
Okay.
Good.
And then this one, this is a current one. So I went to the archive for one. If I go to the archive, I try to at least, make an effort at the assignment and the challenge. And so this one, this is off of Alston Chapel Road, one of my bike rides that I do it's close to the intersection of Austin Chapel and Alex Cockman. So it's down at the end away from Pittsburgh. And there's this one field that's a nice little pasture, and it's a lone pine tree out there. And I was finishing up a ride coming in that way, and I was like, that would be. And I checked, I used photo pills, and I checked to see, well, where's the sun going to be for a sunrise? Let me see if I can't get a silhouette out of that tree. And so I just went out early one Sunday morning, and at first I didn't think the light was going to line up, right? But it provided enough light to give me the silhouette. And then in post, I did a few things. I watched one of those videos, Bill, that you referenced for silhouetting, and I think it was the woman who did the horse and rider silhouette, and she was talking about how she had changed the hue and saturation. So I tried to do that. My sky was not quite as pretty as the one she was working with, but it changed it nicely. And I also did a little bit of removal using the healing brush, and got rid of, there was right where that fog line is along the trees in the background, there was a telephone or a power line showing there. So I got rid of that. And there were a couple of vertical posts, fence posts kind of near the tree, and I got rid of those too. But this one was an ISO of 100 and 93 millimeter focal length. So I did some walking to get my crop that I wanted, but I also had to fine tune it because there was a fence and I didn't want to go into the field uninvited and unrequested. And so it's a f6.3 and it's a 25th of a second. So it was handheld, and I left my vibration control on. Let's see. If I was going to do it over again, I would go back when it's foggier, and maybe, and also I was in the middle of reading some of the focal information, but I couldn't find exactly where I was focusing now when I really went in close, because the pine tree is not in like tack sharp focus, neither is the background. So maybe somewhere in the foreground, I'm not sure, but I would rethink how I was focusing it and try to really get it clear on the tree.
You know how, excuse me.
I think this is a really good picture, Chuck.
Oh, thanks.
Chuck, do you know how far away you were roughly from the tree? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I was at the side of the road, so I think it was probably somewhere between 30 and 40 yards away.
Okay. Good pick.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Mhm.
The only one thing I'll bring up, Chuck, I think you said it was at 93 millimeter, your focal length.
Yes. So it's
And
my
your shutter
kit lens.
speed was 1/25th.
Yeah, it's
I mean-
like, again, so it's my kit lens is 18 to 55. So I must have had it on 55, and it's, because of the crop sensor, it's adding some.
Yeah, just remember, I guess, one thing, and this is why I like to use auto ISO, is that what the focal length of your lens is, and let's say if it was at 60 millimeters, that you should be shooting at no less than 1/60th of a second.
Yes.
Now, if you have auto ISO on, what that would do, it would bring it only down to 1/60th of a second. It wouldn't bring it down to 1/30th. And what it would do, would take your ISO and move it from 100 up to 200. So you won't introduce any kind of maybe shake. I don't know if that's what you said, it's not tack sharp. It could have been just.
It could well have been shaken. It's just the vibration reduction didn't quite get it,
And especially if you're riding a bicycle and you get off, You probably have a little adrenaline going on.
Well, I cheated. I saw it on my bike ride, but I did not. I contemplated going out on my bike,
Oh, okay.
which is a technique that I've been exploring for getting some waterfalls. But no, I took the car.
All right.
But I think this is a good example of the use of the rule of thirds. So the composition is effective.
Yeah.
To me, and the fog line is just, you couldn't have, it couldn't have been more perfect.
Yeah, that was just one of those, just a happy accident of showing up, and
Mm.
well, it was prettier than I expected it might be.
Yep.
Yeah, that without that fog line, that would have just been kind of a, okay, picture.
Okay, but nothing really interesting. Yeah. That's why I say I think it would even be more interesting if there was more fog. And of course, I didn't use the haze removal because it would just take that interesting piece right away.
Mhm.
And one thing that Chuck mentioned at the beginning of this one is photo pills. It's an app that you can, it gives you so much good information as far as when the sun's coming up, what direction it's coming up, where it's going to go. A lot of photographers use that. You can even find out when the Milky Way is going to be coming vertically up over the horizon versus horizontal. And
it's a pretty powerful app. It's a phone app, and he does a whole bunch of instructional videos too. He has some really good. He has one that was excellent. A gentleman who is a painter was talking about basics of composition, and there's so much you can learn about composition from a painter. But anyway,
What is the name of the app? Could you repeat that?
photo, like PHOTO, pills, like PILS. Yeah, you'll find it easily.
Photo pills.
And what did you say about an artist and composition? Repeat that.
Oh, this guy Raphael, who's the Photo Pills developer and guru, and he has a series of instructional videos that he puts out, and one of them I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he's a Spanish. Raphael is Spanish, I believe, but he had a painter who one of the instructional videos was about how to execute better composition in your photographs, what things to look for, and how you might he touches on theories of composition and lots of good stuff like that.
Oh, good.
Okay, up is Key Cobb.
Whoa.
Okay, this is with my Nikon. This is in Zimbabwe, sunset. When you do safaris in Africa, they usually do what they call sundowners. So they take your vehicle right at a nice spot where you can see the sunset, and they give you a snack and a drink for 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how many you want. But so as this was setting, I took this picture. It is cropped on the left to move it, as what Helen said, more of the thirds, and moving the tree over to the third left side.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the original photo, because the sun hadn't gone down quite enough when I took this one, but I still liked it, was the sky was a little bit bluer. So I did some, I guess, call it, rather than hue on the InPixio software, it's called temperature. So I just moved the slider temperature to make it more reddish and the yellow to be more vibrant. This was taken in landscape mode, which is a setting on my camera. I don't have removable lens. It's just one lens that goes from 24 to 2000. This was at f-stop 2.8, 1/30th of a second at 200 ISO. I didn't set any of that, that's what the camera determined was appropriate.
Good
What
shot.
kind of camera is? G-Cub, what
It-
kind of camera?
It's a Nikon Coolpix P900. It's an old model, because I got this maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So I don't know what the updates they have on it. But it's a one lens that goes from 24 millimeters up to 2000 optically and up to 4000 digitally.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's great for taking pictures of wildlife that you don't want to be standing right next to, for example. So I'll probably show you one or two in the next one when we do close-ups. I won't be close up, but the camera will be. This one is also using the same camera. This is, I'm sorry, this one's using a Fujifilm EX50. This was done in 2015. We took a trip to Mongolia, and one of the excursions we did was seeing the reindeer herders. And we had arrived where they were late in the day. And so we pitched our tent. And in the morning, I heard some rustling next to the tent. So I looked out to my left and saw some shadow on the left. And I turned to the right and saw this picture. And so I immediately grabbed my camera, and I don't even know whether I was standing or kneeling or laying down, but I took the picture. And I haven't done much adjustment on this one. There's no cropping, and I think I might have just did the clarity slider to improve that a little bit. But other than that, it's as was originally taken. The f-stop was 105, 105, it was the speed, and again 200 ISO.
And Keycock, how much dark space is below what looks to be the horizon? Is there anything left on the frame down lower?
No, this has not been cropped, so that's
Okay.
kind of directly from my tent, looking straight to the sunrise and seeing the reindeer herder teepee and the reindeer over on the left. But there isn't much there. It's kind of a flat area. The reindeer herders have typically 4 locations that they pitch their kind of a longer term tent, and depending on the 4 seasons. So the poles that they use for the teepee just stay there, and the wrap around those poles is what they take from one spot to the next. And rather than having cattle or goats or whatever, they have reindeer, and they move those along with them.
Well, this is really powerful.
Mike,
Yeah.
Mike, were you asking that question, thinking about the ability to
Well,
straighten the
I don't-
horizon a little?
I think it. I mean, it's a great photograph. I would like to see a little bit more underneath
Yes.
it. Now, and what I was about to suggest was that, Keycob, this is another one of those where you create a blank canvas, but the blank canvas is black, and you drop this
Okay,
onto that so that you can then add a white border around it. Actually, you're creating something that's not in the original frame that would give it a little more bottom than it has.
oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Bill, you said something?
Yeah, the one thing, just because there's always a picture within a picture,
Right,
and I like the idea. I mean, you took it fast. It's not going to be tack sharp because the circumstances, and it doesn't make a difference because, you know, this is more about feeling than it is about detail.
yeah,
The only thing I would try, and it's just a different perspective, is to cut out a lot of the sky where there's the bluish, maybe take out the top 30%, and have it look like a panorama a little more. Have it maybe
Oh,
wider and a little shorter so that,
okay.
yeah, the eyes don't go up into the sky. They kind of stay more focused down there. Again, is because, yeah, because what I
Yeah,
did, I did one
I'll-
of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try that and send it to you.
Yeah, it's just,
Wow.
You're still up, Key Cobb.
All right, so we, in 2019, we were in Armenia doing a Habitat for Humanity build. And after that build, we took the opportunity to go over to Georgia and the Caucasus Mountains. So we stayed at this place, and this was after we had done our hike in the mountains. We came back and sat down at this table. We were waiting for dinner and waiting for the other person that was hiking with us. So this is cropped. My wife was on the left-hand side, so I removed her from the photo and just focused on the glassware, and was just stunned by how the light from the window still made so much sparkling on the glass and the silverware and the plate. So this one, again, f-stop 2.8, 1/30th of a second, and ISO 140, and cropped on the left side.
I think it's
I love this
amazing.
thing.
I know we're not always just supposed to say, oh, this photograph is amazing, but it's amazing.
It actually is. And, you know, the contrast between the lights and the darks on all the silverware and on the glass, it just brings such depth to it, even though you only shot it at 2.8.
Yeah,
So it's the coloration that draws you into this. And what I find interesting, if I look at the top of the window,
yeah,
you know, some people might say, oh, well, you know, maybe you could have straightened it out. But then the frame on the other side, on the right-hand side there, is perfectly straight. So if you
Mhm.
changed one, you would change the other. But yeah, it's just,
I tried
one of the
moving,
best I've seen in
making
a long
everything
time. This is
straight, and it
really
just
good.
didn't go. Straight.
It's a powerful image.
It
That's maybe a
creates,
good word for it.
yeah,
And
it
the photo,
creates a mood that is unusual.
the focus is great because you can pick up the detail on the wall,
Yeah,
Mhm.
And-
exactly.
and the window is set so well, you can pick up the detail on the top of the window as well as the bottom. So you know, when you look at this, you know you're not looking at something that's modern. So this is an old building. And that's what makes it so interesting, you know. It looks like something from the 1700s
Mhm.
in terms of style, but I don't know how old the building was, but
I don't remember either, but it was family owned, and then this guy from Denmark, who's a prolific hiker and photographer, also bought it and now uses it as a hotel for tourists. And then he takes them hiking or cross-country skiing during the winter into the mountains, into the Caucasus.
Now, was this with your cool pics also, or were your other one?
No, this is the Coolpix,
Tell me
the
that.
Nikon P900.
Yeah, maybe this is for another time. I'm just trying to understand what that camera is. Is it a mirrorless? Is it a DSLR? Sometime when
It's
we're
a
together.
DSLR, but it's, I think someone says they don't, it isn't the camera, it's the photographer. I think in my case, it's the camera, not the photographer.
It's an amazing camera, or amazing photographer one.
Yeah. Well, thank you all.
I'm not sure that you can't fix, I'm disturbed by the perspective problem in this photograph. And
Okay.
I'm not sure that you can't fix the perspective in the interior of the photograph without making the outside perspective be all wrong. And if you did fix the inside, I think it'd be more important than to fix the, I guess it's a mirror or painting on the right. Because the stemware, the glassware is all, the perspective on the glassware is all, I just find it, aside from the actual, obviously, the subject matter is so beautiful in the actual photograph, but the perspective in it really is, I wish those
Well-
glasses were straight up and down.
Yeah, the table is, if you look at the front of the table, you'll see that it's pretty much horizontal. So I think what the problem is that the walls are not necessarily, being an old building, the walls are not necessarily vertical. And the
Right.
wall and the floor may not necessarily be level with the walls.
But what
No.
about the glassware? Is the table not flat?
Well, isn't the glassware straight up?
No,
No,
Are you sure?
no.
What
Here.
millimeter was your focal length?
This
I'm
was
assuming it's
probably
10.
in landscape mode, which is the 24 millimeter
that's,
wide angle, but I don't know anything else.
that
I
would
don't know.
have an impact on this, what we're talking about then, wouldn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, because this is cropped. This is probably only no more than 2/3 of the actual picture.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my input.
Somebody that
No, no.
knows more about lenses talk about that, having used a 24 millimeter, that's a wide angle, that
Yeah.
would have changed
Yeah.
the,
Oh, yeah,
everything.
the lower your millimeter, your focal length, the more introduction of things not being straight.
Mhm,
And that's why, like we talked about in the Photoshop elements, how to take that skew and have them stand back up a little bit.
mhm.
Okay.
This is mine.
Tom,
And it's, let's see, I shot it with my Apple iPhone SE. It's ISO 25, 56 millimeters, f1.8 at 1/3,472nd of a second. We were down in Peach Country in Moore County, and where there are a lot of longleaf pines, and the sky was absolutely beautiful, stark blue, and the green against it was just made you had to photograph it. And so then I took this photograph, and then a lot of another big branch in the upper right-hand corner, which I removed with the in-painting brush tool. And then I just looked at it, and I looked at it, and it looked like, okay, well, that's a picture of a pine tree. And then I decided to fool with the curves tool and radicalized it and to this point.
I keep
So,
seeing
there
it
you go.
horizontal rather than portrait.
Uh-huh.
That's an interesting picture too.
With the with the little branch facing up.
Yep,
Huh.
just an idea.
Okay. Yeah.
But you've
So-
added a kind of Asian or Oriental
Yeah.
That's what I thought. It looked,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah, it looked Japanese again. This is 2 sessions in a row where I've come up with sort of Japanese looking
Hey,
thing.
Tom, when you
Yeah.
did when you did the S curves, is that when it actually altered the coloration, or did you do some color blending of some type?
No, it was with, I did it in the S curve, in the, yeah, curves tool. I really radically pulled down the highlights.
Yeah.
And
What
some of
letter
the-
did it look like after you're done?
Pardon?
I was gonna say the S curve, you know. You said
Yeah, it was no
radical.
longer, it was not an S curve at that point. It looked like a car wreck.
I like
There
the
you go.
processing,
Yeah,
abstract.
Yeah, I like the blend of the colors.
Yep,
That really does it for me. Yeah.
purple, blue, green.
Yeah, the tool itself, of course, did the blending, and you know, when you start fooling with it that way, you can do an infinite number of things. And I just stopped with this one because I like that purple color in the green.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
This is
Affinity, yep.
Yeah, this is an affinity photo. Oh, well, I thought we're okay. Yeah, this is the other one that I put in. Let's see. Information on this one is it's an ISO 128 millimeters f11 at 1/200th of a second.
Hmm.
This was shot at in Maritime Forest in Emerald Isle. They had dug out a place for yet another building, and so I got to go back into the Maritime Forest, which are difficult to get into, and I just took a lot of shots, and I just loved the shape of those. The bones of those trees are so amazing.
yeah.
So and then it was not at a silhouette in any way. So what I did was I dropped a black screen over it, and then moved the black screen where the bones of the tree were, and then so that came through as light, and then decrease the opacity of the black screen, maybe 10-15%, so that some of the black from behind would come through as well. So it's kind of like two silhouettes, one with light on dark and the other dark on light.
Wow.
That
I
branch
like
is
the
really,
contrast.
that branch is really beautiful. Did you modify the branch much, or was it like that, Tom?
I did. I added one. I added a branch in there. If you look, you can see it. It's I cheated.
It looks good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I cloned in a branch. I cloned in another branch. I don't know how to describe which one it is. Say maybe 1, 2, 3, fourth one up from the bottom.
well, it's seamless.
Yep. it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it has
Did you
kind of a
have-
weird look. It feels like, I don't know, moonlight, night. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, it feels like moonlight. Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that you have the black branches in the background adds the depth to it. That's,
Mhm.
it wouldn't have been as interesting to me if they hadn't been there.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that didn't get removed.
Yeah, that's great the way you can modify the opacity of the black I mean, you can make it go away entirely or anywhere in between. I think this is about 85% black, so 15% of it is leaking through. Fascinating technique. I love to do it. I just love covering the thing with black and then bringing out by painting with black over the top, you bring out the light below it.
Sounds like
What
it's
if
tips and
you-
tricks to me.
Yeah. What if you had used a clone tool or something like that and removed some of the black mass at the bottom? Is that a building?
Yeah. I tried it and it was just getting really messy, and I agree. It's I don't like it.
Yeah, it draws my eye because
Uh-huh.
the rest is so open, and then you have this black bob at the bottom. that-
Yeah, and even off to the right there, it's open and it looks really, really
Uh-huh.
nice.
Yeah,
But I think, but I couldn't, I started to take it out and it was just, I couldn't find enough clone spaces, if you know what I mean.
hmm
Since it is a kind of gradated, I couldn't find the right color, or I don't know how to describe it, but it just started looking really messy. And
I haven't been able to do it. I assumed other people could, but might keep playing with that one.
Mhm.
All right, good job, Tom.
Thanks.
Larry,
Wow.
So my model was a little reluctant. So I took this really quickly, otherwise I would have lost her. Yeah, it just sort of struck me that that might work. I don't know why I thought of it. So the ISO on this was like 100, but I used that exposure compensation, you know, I've never used that before. I had no idea what those plus and minus meant.
Bingo.
I did it at minus 1.0. You know, of course, I didn't know what I was doing. So that's because I had it on aperture priority, you know, and it was, I was really confused about the process, and I was just hoping that that it would work. So I did crop it just so I could get the window frame in there without anything on either side, and did it in black and white. And then I used the auto clarity on this Apple, my Apple laptop. I mean, which is the Apple program for post-production.
Hmm.
And I think it's, I use that the auto clarity because I was trying to make sure that it was clear, but I think I did okay in that. And I try to do the third, you know, the window pane is actually perfect for thirds, right?
Right.
and Larry, did you do it? And maybe I had to step away, but did you? Has anybody asked you about the any straightening that you did?
Well, I didn't straighten it. The left side seemed to be pretty straight.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe
and
it was the angle I took it at.
this is one that if you didn't straighten it, it doesn't need it. I mean, it really doesn't. And you know, there's another thing that I think added to, well, which made straightening unnecessary. And I'm betting is that your camera was virtually level as you took this picture. And you know, you can actually buy a little bubble level that goes in the strobe,
Hot shoot.
the speed light, hot shoe, so that you can make sure that the camera is level. And that's one way to get rid of distortion, especially in a shot like this. If you had been lower or higher or left or right, I don't think it would not have been as straight as it is. And I like the shot.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
looking at, I guess I could have raised the blind a little bit because her head kind of
I think
maybe
that
see her
actually,
head bit.
maybe if anything, well, I don't know whether you'd want to lower it, but I don't think you would want a blown out area above her head, and the blind gets rid of almost all of that. I
Yeah,
like it where it is. You can see the silhouette of her hair.
right.
It'd be interesting to see what it would have looked like if you stepped back a step and none of that brightness was behind her. I'm just trying to visualize it.
Mm.
Just but using that one stop less exposure brought that silhouette to where it should be.
Yeah.
If you had shot it at the regular exposure, she would have probably been too bright.
I've never used that before, and it's pretty neat.
Yep.
Does everybody know what I mean?
Yeah.
The exposure.
Yes,
Yeah,
I just learned it yesterday.
yeah, I've been
Oh.
experimenting with it too. Yeah.
So you've used it, right? Chuck, you've used it, right?
Oh, I have used it, not effectively. I'm still learning it, and I'm just beginning to understand, when it would be well applied, and but yeah, it's letting the camera do some of the making it a little bit easier by just pushing a single button instead of making other adjustments.
Some days I can use it and some days I forget how, but it's effective, helpful.
In fact, I started using it after watching that Northrop video that Bill, gave us the link to, and the one that, again, that like showed me how to use my camera, every little bit about my camera. That is such a useful, I'm going to watch it again a few times, but yeah, just when he was going through and Tony was going through the explanation of how that works, I realized, yeah, I need to use that. That's a good tool.
Because about a month or two ago, we did the tips and tricks on the exposure compensation. And in a case like this, where you can go negative to allow it to become a silhouette, if you ever get in a situation where, say you have an overcast day and everything looks gray, and you're maybe taking a picture of a boat out in the water somewhere, but every time you take it and you look on the back of your camera, the boat looks black, loses all the detail. You can go the other way and do a +1 or a +2, which raises the exposure and will give you more detail in that dark object. They just kind of work opposites.
And if you're shooting in RAW, you can make that kind of adjustment in software. If you've forgotten to make it on your camera, you can change exposure values on before you put it into Lightroom or whatever, or once you're processing RAW.
Yeah.
When does all of this become automatic and you remember it all?
It doesn't, Helen. It doesn't. It's muscle memory.
It feels like to me that there's so many ways you could maybe end up at a similar place with an image that I'm always trying to recover what I forgot. Like maybe it's in post. I'm like, man, I should, so maybe I can fix it this way. Yeah, that's,
Yeah, me too. All right, Susan.
Okay, so this is mine, and Larry, I guess, I did actually use exposure compensation. I used -2 when I was doing this. So what I did here was this challenge seemed to me to be a challenge. So I had a, what do you call, a little studio box, and I took 2 big flashlights and I shined it into the box and this little black vase that I had, and it turned out I had some dried flowers, and I realized they were kind of not very dense. So I just stuck them in here and shot into this box, and it was at f8, ISO 200, and 1/60th of a second. And like I said, it was -2 exposure compensation. And it is not in the rule of thirds. It's right pretty much in the middle. So, and I didn't straighten it, because if I'd straightened the back, the bottom would have been all strange. So anyway,
I like that you didn't straighten it. Now you say you used 2 flashlights.
Yeah, yeah, two big flashlights.
Where were they in relationship to the, I guess I'm asking, you've really got one, well, I guess you do have 2 shadows,
Yeah,
do you? Yeah.
yeah, they were actually directly pointed into the studio box, pretty much where, where the vase is.
That's cool.
Hey, Susan, how many pictures did you take before you chose that one?
Let's see, probably about 10.
Yep.
maybe.
Right. The point about that I bring up is that when you set something up like this, you can practice. And you can take 10 shots and you can make adjustments. And it becomes a good learning moment by having something static in front of you and trying to be creative and changing f-stops or, things like that, and changing the light. So it's a good way to practice and learn.
Susan, this thing, it looks almost three-dimensional to me. I mean, and I think that's the lighting. That vase is just floating.
And there's something to me that's pleasing about following the lines of the box like that, even though you pointed out, Susan, that you didn't do rule of thirds or, it did, but it's sort of, the composition is enhanced by the seams that in the box to me.
Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah, I know when I like, if I cropped it all the way on the right and brought it all the way in and you didn't see the corner, it just didn't seem to be as effective as having that corner in there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well done. I like it.
Yeah, definitely.
This one is Frank,
Cool.
Oh,
the epitome of a silhouette.
A silhouette. Wow.
Wow.
nice.
Not a whole lot you can say about that one, other than maybe crop it a little on the right. I don't know.
Yeah, I think where I mean, they're looking into the frame, not out of the frame, cropped as it is.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think one of the lucky or patient thing was to get the guy in the shorts to just totally stand in front of the sun coming up or going down. I can't remember which way it
Yeah.
was. Actually, I had a note about this and I forgot to bring it up. But beautiful shot.
Really good.
This, he
Right.
said, he took New Jersey, maybe a couple of folks that were in the camera club that he was in at that point. Obviously doing more than just photography, but well, when you watch,
I love
Frank,
how you
great shot.
Good
you
pick.
can see the netting through there. That's terrific.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing is, either we have UFOs in there, or we have spots that could be taken out.
But
Yeah, I could never
again,
tell whether the spots are on the frame or whether they're on my computer.
Yeah.
That's what I always work.
again, I'm impressed that he's got some, what am I trying to say? You can see the rocks at the bottom.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think it would be hard.
detail in the dark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad that's not just a black blob down there, that there is something that you can see below them.
There's one more picture from Lynn that it, for some reason, didn't get into the queue, and I want to go back and find it. I'm not real sure why it got lost, but let me go back and open that again. Oh, well, now you can see it.
Is it a picture of you, Mike?
No, hang on. Okay. I'm not sure how much of the clutter I can get rid of behind this, but let me go back to Zoom, and that's not it. All right, or share screen. There it is. I can't get rid of the clutter, but hopefully you can get an idea of it. She took this on a train and didn't mean to send it as a movie, but I think this is the frame that she would want to be shown. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like it.
Boy, that is a interesting picture.
Whoops. Well, it's definitely a good silhouette.
Yeah.
yeah,
And the sun, I guess it's the sun. Yeah, it'll be sunset. Um, there's a flare that I think kind of adds to the picture. If you put that sun in the frame, I think it would have been blown out everywhere. But
With the reflection on the water, um, and the way that the bridge is apparently right at the horizon is very effective.
yeah.
well, I don't know what happened, Lynn, when you watched this, but I'm sorry for all the clutter in the background. But
Still, it gives us a good idea of a good shot.
I don't know why it didn't pick up in the queue. Maybe because it was a movie. I'm not sure.
Speaking about Lynn, we talked about the last time we met um, about displaying our photographs, and I mentioned that I would talk to the people at the community church where her friends' paintings, by the way, they're beautiful, are hanging in the sanctuary. And she indicated to me that she would like to see the photographs that were to be hung. And I the reason for that was because they plan these art shows a year in advance. So the earliest we could even attempt to do something like that at our church would be in next year after the spring, because they decide in the spring what they're going to use. So perhaps Lynn's church, Chapel in the Pine, could probably hang our work without going through a lot of front end stuff that we would have to do to go to the community church. I just sort of, if Lynn's listening to this, so this is me saying that perhaps you should look at your church and see whether or not it would be more it would be easier to work with.
Well, I know that the plans are still in the making, and I volunteered to help as I could with vetting the system. Um, once the system is purchased, the system that the church is looking at is not going to take long to put up. It's basically like hanging a piece of molding from the the wall close to the ceiling, so it wouldn't be hard to get it up. And I'm having to wait for a year to get a display. It's a long time in my life. So
When I,
Right.
when I go,
They're not difficult to hang. I mean, if you, I've seen them, and if you have a little bit of if it's a straight wall, I think you'd have more of a problem. But if you had something that would be able to, you could attach it to, or maybe they just will put up a piece of 1x2 and then just have it attached to that, but it'd be a lot simpler.
well, in fact, Larry, as you talked about that, I think that the one that's been in the senior center is like what is being proposed for the church.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's just it's a little. I can't remember if they use a piece of molding, but the ones that I've seen in museums and other galleries, it's been a little V-shaped groove that attaches to the wall, and then there's a clip that goes into the V with a wire that dangles down from it,
Yeah,
and a slide on that wire so that you can move the photo up and down. But well, thanks for checking. I guess we can talk about the community church some more, but a year seems like a long way to wait.
yeah, I just built a little shelf. It's 6 feet long, couple pieces of, 3 pieces of wood glued together, tacked together, so that you can put it on the wall. And then once it's up there, you just take your frame and just put it there. So instead of maybe saying all the tops are in line, all the bottoms are in line, and there's no, once it's up, there's no maintenance, no hanging, no anything.
Yeah, do
Well, good.
you have like a little routered channel in the board so that the photo drops into that?
Yeah, like a plate shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get this. Here.
Well,
It's
it's
just
oh,
3
there
pieces
you
of
go,
wood.
right there. Yeah, that's what I was.
That's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
it is.
exactly.
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool.
So for 6 foot, it's like $15 worth of wood.
It's like a chalk tray.
Yeah, that's all it is. Then when it's up on the wall, you just put it, this little lip in the front here just stops it from sliding off and it's done.
Nice.
So another good meeting. 2 weeks from today, back at the church.
Yes,
And next week for the little workshop.
and we are at the Chapel of the Pines for the workshop, not the library,
Right.
right?
And by then
Okay.
we'll have a new or verified challenge and tips and tricks if there is to be one.
And
I'll have-
Helen, can you, or Bill, can you send Helen your PowerPoint on the the tips and tricks you did today, and she can attach it to the
Sure. Mhm.
next minutes? Yeah,
Yeah, $5.
okay. I'll give it to you
Just-
next time.
Susan gets to pay it, not me.
Okay, okay.
And
Start-
Chuck and KeyCAD, I'll be in touch a little later today. I'll send out an email and we can either get together in person or do it on Zoom. We'll figure that out afterwards.
Okay,
I don't,
Yeah.
and actually, Key Cop stepped away when you made the commitment that everything's gonna be resolved in 2 weeks. So Key,
I was on my way to across the Atlantic, so
He knew his name was gonna come up, so he left the room.
Well,
but
thank
we'll
you.
have to do it before Thursday. which isn't much time.
Why, what's Thursday?
I leave Thursday evening for another 3 weeks.
Oh. Well, how,
So,
hey, Chuck, you around tomorrow?
I am.
Keycap tomorrow?
okay,
Pick a time?
time for tomorrow.
You guys like morning or afternoon?
I like morning.
Morning
but-
is great. Morning is fine.
All right, so I've got a logistical thing in my house that I have to resolve, so, yeah, actually, so what time is that happening?
I have to drop them off between 8 and 9, and I'm not sure what time I have to pick them up.
Okay, so tomorrow's probably not good for me unless we do it remote.
Okay,
Okay,
we
we
can
do
do
it
a remote.
Okay. Then, yeah, morning is fine.
What time? Keycap 10?
10 will be fine.
Okay, 10
Yeah.
a.m. We'll use the same link.
Okay,
All
That
right,
should work, right, Mike?
Yep. If it doesn't,
And,
if it doesn't work, go to the next, well, no, that, never mind. Yeah, it's the same link.
Yep.
okay.
All
So,
right,
10
thank you
a.m.
all.
I'll get the
And
stuff
Thank you.
out in the next hour and
Sure.
ready to go.
okay,
All right.
hope
Thanks
to
Adios.
again.
hope to see you all, but don't expect key cob on at our next meeting, but we'll see his work
Where
product.
to now?
Norway, Norway.
Goodness.
Bye.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Safe travels.
Thank you.